Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe. For this morning, you can see we're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 3, where it is the story of how God called Samuel to be his prophet, to be a prophet for him. So, 1 Samuel chapter 3 verse 1 says, "And the child Samuel, which we know Hannah had dedicated to the Lord, given to the Lord in the temple, and the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days." There was no open vision. So there weren't any prophets in Israel. The word of the Lord was a very precious commodity, and anybody who the Lord spoke to was absolutely felt like they were somebody very special and very, very important to the Lord. And I honestly feel the same way today whenever the Lord speaks with me. I would hope you do too. You feel special when the Lord decides to speak with you. And it came to pass at that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim that he could not see, and ere the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep. And the Lord called Samuel. So it was nighttime. They were getting ready for bed. They turned out the light. It was time for sleep, and nobody could see because it was very dark in the temple without the light being lit. And Samuel was laid down to sleep. But the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Here am I." And he ran unto Eli, and said, "Here am I, for thou calledst me." And he said, "I called not, lie down again." And he went and lay down. And the Lord called yet again, "Samuel." And Samuel arose and went to Eli, and said, "Here am I, for thou didst call me." And he answered, "I called not, my son, lie down again." So for a second time, God calls out and says, "Samuel." And Samuel thinks it's Eli, the voice of authority over him. But, of course, Eli says, "I didn't call you, go back to bed." Verse 7, "Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him." He didn't know the Lord. He wasn't personal. He wasn't on a personal basis with the Lord. And we have to be very careful about how we treat the thoughts and thought processes of young people. Because sometimes a young person, especially a young child, might hear of the Lord, they might hear the Lord's voice, and just not know that it's the Lord speaking to them, not understand that God is the one talking to them in that time. So, the Lord was not yet revealed unto Samuel. Samuel was not yet a prophet of God. God had not yet spoken to Samuel except here in his room, calling his name twice so far. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. And he arose and went to Eli and said, "Here am I, for thou didst call me." And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, "Go, lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth." So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And I don't know about you, but if I were in Samuel's shoes in this case, and Eli had just told me that's probably the Lord, speak to him this way, I would be there wide awake, eyes wide open, waiting for the voice of the Lord. I would be excited and afraid to hear the Lord speaking to me. So here's Samuel goes and lies down in his place. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And verse 10, "And the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth." I'd have been terrified if I were him, so that's why I said it that way. Verse 11, "And the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel, at which both the ears of every one that heareth it shall tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house when I begin. I will also make an end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not." So obviously God had already been speaking to Eli. Eli already knew that judgment was coming on him. Eli already knew the destruction that was coming to his family, and it was because he did not restrain his children. Not because of his children, But because Eli did not restrain his children, his whole household would be judged and destroyed, wiped out by the Lord. If Eli would have just been the father to say, look, you're out, you can't do these things, stop it now, to administer proper punishment. You know, the Old Testament had even a law in place that if your children were unruly and uncontrollable, you were supposed to bring them before the council. They were supposed to figure out if they could get them to be obedient, and if they couldn't, they stoned the children. I mean, they were really serious about disobedience in children. And so he could have easily had that done, or he could have easily at least said, you've lost your place in the priesthood, you're gone, you're done, you're out of the house, and sent them on their way. But he didn't. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he turned a blind eye to his children and to the wickedness that they were doing, which is very wrong to do. When we see wickedness in the world, we need to make sure to call it out for what it is. We can't go and just turn a blind eye and pretend it's not happening, doesn't exist. It does exist. It must be judged properly, and we must be there to call it what it is. God doesn't want us to be silent about sin in this world. And it says here, and therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice nor offering forever. That Eli was past now, he was past forgiveness. There was no way to turn back. That's a sad place to be right there. To be at a place where you've ignored God's voice until God says, I've got no more sacrifice for you. And Samuel lay until the morning, and opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel feared to show Eli the vision. So he laid there, possibly wide awake all night. When the light came, the morning came, he went and opened the doors, got everything open. Then it says, then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son? And he answered, here am I, just as at other times. And he said, what is the thing that the Lord hath said unto thee? I pray thee, hide it not from me. God do so to thee, and more also, if thou hide anything from me of all the things that he said unto thee. So Samuel here is trying to almost threaten, Eli is trying to threaten Samuel and say, you got to tell me what God said. If not, then God's going to do the same thing to you. Of course, Samuel doesn't know any different, but the thing here is Eli really has no place to be saying something like that. He's cast out from God. He's in the same sort of place that King Saul would have been when he came to the witch at Endor. He has no power anymore or authority with the Lord. Eli is really abandoned by God at this point completely. He has no authority to be saying this sort of thing. But Samuel does the right thing. It says, and Samuel told him every whit, the whole story, and hid nothing from him. And he said, it is the Lord. Eli says, it is the Lord. Let him do what seemeth good. What a cop-out. What a strange thing. He's almost trying to put blame on God now. Samuel, God said it. Let him do what's good in his eyes. Instead of going down on his face before the Lord and apologizing or begging to make a sacrifice or pleading with Samuel to speak to the Lord, because obviously the Lord found favor with Samuel. No, Eli says, well, whatever God sees best, let him destroy my household. Let me have no more sacrifice. I almost wonder if Samuel would have maybe had the opportunity and availability to come to Eli's defense and beg the Lord for a second chance for him. But Eli didn't want it. And it says, and Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and did let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So, there you have it. Samuel becomes a prophet. God calls him in the night, speaks with him, and Samuel doesn't recognize his voice until after he finds out that it is the Lord, and then begins to recognize the voice of the Lord. And we know, as we're going to be studying here going forward, Samuel goes through many prophecies, much speaking of the Lord, much of what God gives to him to speak about, and through all of the things that go down through his life, it says here, the Lord was with him and did let none of his words fall to the ground. So anytime Samuel speaks a prophecy, that means it was a real prophecy. God made it a real thing. God spoke to Samuel. Samuel said what God told him to say, and it happened. There was never a time where Samuel's prophecies failed, which is fantastic because that's evidence of a genuine prophet of the Lord. So, there's the call of Samuel and the call of his life. What do you think? Do you have anything here that really jumped out and stood out to you and made a major thought or impact to your mind? If so, let me know in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your friends or on other social media if you can. Let me know what you think of this daily devotional. God bless. Have a wonderful day in the Lord. I hope to see you again tomorrow on another Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe.